Welcome back to Blood 2 The Chosen. Last time we followed up a reused level with a reused level within a reused level. Today we're handling the final level of Chapter 2.
Hey, this place should be giving me kickbacks.
This means a lot of decrepit and underground architecture, unreasonable enemy placement, and eventually a boss fight. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. I wanted to get a good close-up shot of one of these guys flipping the bird, but no dice. This is a real nice way to start the level, isn't it? Nothing but nuisance enemies.
At least I'm not the only old dead guy down here.
That's another line that the Blood Wiki claims is cut, but isn't. In this case, it's probably because it's not guaranteed to play. I didn't hear it in my test run. This is just cruel enemy placement. Who intentionally blocks the escape route every time? Interestingly, the level layout actually works to my favor, at least now that I'm sort of used to the game's trickery. Long hallways like this give me just enough space to dodge a Drudge Lord's fireballs as I pump it full of lead in return. It wouldn't help quite as well against Drudge Priests, but we'll deal with that when the game takes away the ability to just run.
Have a nice day. You, sir, are no gentleman.
Shikari are in a bit of a bind too, because all the debris and tight corners means they can't keep magnetizing themselves to my head.
Right, who's laughing now? You, sir, are no gentleman.
There's plenty of mummified corpses all along the level, but there's no point in opening them up. None of them drop life essences for some reason. Fucking Gravestone dropped one last chapter. What's these guys' problem?
That's right, who's laughing now?
Seriously, give it a rest. Nothing's gonna beat that prophet doing it. Give this a rest too. This kind of spawning is just painful for the sake of being painful.
No one can stop me!
Yeah, where did you come from?
That's a good way to get yourself killed.
Presento time. Probably a waste, but eh. That last Drudge Lord dropped a life seed for us. And there's another one for us down there. Guess what we're coming up on?
This is gonna get a lot worse before it gets better.
That was another line the wiki claims was cut, by the way. This one is called the Behemoth. It doesn't have any particular relation to other enemies from Reality Beta, and in fact hates everything else's guts, so it'll at least make some attempt to attack things other than you. It's got 2 attacks, swiping at you from close range or smacking the ground to send out shockwaves. This is a very long and very boring fight, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about something else. As I mentioned last time, Blood 2 faced far more stiff competition than its predecessor did by releasing in the fall of 1998. I mentioned 4 games, but for the purpose of how I'm planning to split videos like this up, today we're going to discuss one in particular. The first game out of the gate was Unreal, which was released on May 22nd, a full 6 months before the rest. Being so much earlier, there wasn't a whole lot that Blood 2 could have done to beat it to market without being rushed even worse than it already was. The games did bear some noticeable similarities, however. Each used a proprietary 3D game engine rather than settling for deriving themselves from Quake, and both were published by GT Interactive. Beyond that, the similarities end. Whereas Blood 2 was rushed out in just less than a year, Unreal spent over 3 years in development. Unreal also took steps to distance itself from the more closed-in environments other games of the time tended to favor, such as the urban ghettos Blood 2 favors. While the first level of the game did demonstrate your typical spaceship corridors with all the hallmarks of a standard horror shooter where you had no idea what was going on other than that it was horrible and nasty, it only did that for about 2 minutes before dumping you into a massive, bright, and exotic new world. Interestingly, the game was originally supposed to have a female protagonist. The option to play as either gender was only added later because of several other high-profile games which had female player characters, and even then the game still defaults to a female player model, and it didn't even have any sort of blunt or bladed implement to become the mascot weapon of the series, instead settling for a recharging energy pistol. While the game focused more on trying to raise the bar for single-player experiences, the Unreal series' legacy really lies in multiplayer gameplay, as an attempt to flesh out the multiplayer experience in a massive expansion pack eventually evolved into the separate release of 1999's Unreal Tournament. Both games would later see other sequels in 2002 and 2003, Legend Entertainment taking the reins for a proper single-player experience with Unreal 2: The Awakening.
Old X-Core saying, talk to pilot, goes splat.
While Epic Games would try to jump on the yearly NFL-style bandwagon with Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004, Epic themselves would later move on to recombine the two halves of the franchise with Unreal Championship 2, their Leandri conflict, and then Unreal Tournament 3, which featured gameplay focused on the typical multiplayer objectives but sprinkled story bits on top of them. Championship 2 explicitly taking place during one of the eponymous competitions, while 3 tried to shoehorn them into an actual sort of war setting. Interestingly, Unreal Tournament 3's development mirrored some of the problems that Blood 2's had a decade prior. While the game itself wasn't rushed and didn't have its team split in half to work on another game, it was picked up for publishing by another group that was dealing with a terrible financial situation, and hoped this release would reverse their fortunes. The original game's primary developers, Epic Games, are still around with several other high-profile series under their belt, particularly in a shift towards console development in the 7th generation with the third-person cover-based Gears of War, and perhaps most notably in the modern-day the Battle Royale game Fortnite. Digital Extremes, a near-constant companion in the series' early development, started work on a successor to the original Unreal Tournament that quickly saw its several extensive changes in scope and tone, shifting somewhere around 2004 into a space-based shooter that morphed again into the generic Dark Sector. That original plan would eventually see release as the 2013 free-to-play Warframe. Legend Entertainment, however, was shut down in early 2004, their last work being alpha versions of an expanded multiplayer for Unreal 2 and assistance in developing Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. One other company to come out of this was the short-lived Boss Key Productions, formed in 2014 by Epic alumni Cliff Bleszinski and Arjen Bruce, which only put out 2 games, the notorious flops of Lawbreakers and Radical Heights, before the company folded in 2018. On the engine front, Epic succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The original Unreal Engine was more successful than they could have predicted, with Wikipedia listing 25 games running on the original iteration versus 23 on the competing Quake 3 engine. Later iterations got more and more popular, with Wikipedia listing 60 games running on Unreal Engine 2 and 2.5 and over 400 on Unreal Engine 3.
Just about had enough of you.
And that ends the second of 2 straight-up bullet sponges introduced in as many levels.
You're thinking about Ophelia. How very touching.
Oh, I'll do more than that.
There is a permanent rift in Gideon's temple. It is a focus for all the damage that is being done, an epicenter, so to speak. You will find Ophelia there.
Groovy.
Chernobog's destruction opened many doors between the worlds. They can only be sealed by the one that binds. That power lies within you. This reality will perish unless you restore it.
Let it burn. I never liked this place anyway.
There is another reality forcing its way through the rifts, ancient and ravenous. It is neither good nor evil, it merely is. But it will devour us all.
He must have blinked.
That's an appropriate way to end this chapter, I think. Of course, being the end of the chapter means there's just that little bit more of cut content. Our actual friendly chat with Ishmael didn't go through any changes, but there was still Gideon's end of chapter narrations. This one doesn't tell as much about what the game's original story plan was, other than that things were going to get pretty apocalyptic. Anyway, with that, we bring Chapter 2 to a close. We're more than halfway through the game now. I'll see you next week for Chapter 3.